Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. And today we're diving into something I think a lot of you people struggle with, and that's self-forgiveness.
Oh, absolutely.
So we're looking at radical self-forgiveness. We've got Colin Tipping's book kind of as our guide here,
Yeah,
and this isn't just like your typical self-help kind of skim the surface.
right.
We're really trying to like get down into the nitty-gritty and like
Yes,
pull out some of those like aha moments and those actionable things that you can like take away and actually apply to your life.
absolutely. I think one of the things that Tipping does really well in this book is that he kind of flips the script on forgiveness.
Yeah.
We tend to think about forgiveness in very traditional terms,
Right.
and he makes the argument that traditional forgiveness, particularly when it comes to ourselves, is nearly impossible
Oh.
because of this inherent power imbalance.
Okay, so it's not about, letting someone off the hook or forgetting what happened.
Exactly.
It's about more a change in perspective to benefit yourself.
Yes, it's about a shift in perspective that liberates you,
Wow.
regardless of the other person's actions or even their existence.
Gotcha.
It's an internal process.
Okay, that's huge.
It is a very different way to look at forgiveness.
Yeah. It is a total mind shift from how we usually think about forgiveness.
Right.
I'm already intrigued.
Yeah, and I think to illustrate this point, he brings in that anecdote about the woman on Oprah
Oh, right, right.
who forgave her daughter's murderer, and even Oprah was stunned.
Yeah,
It really highlights how our conventional view of forgiveness can keep us stuck.
absolutely.
So it kind of begs the question, like, if traditional forgiveness is so difficult,
Yeah,
how do we actually break free?
right.
And that's where his concept of the inner committee comes in.
Okay.
Imagine your mind as a boardroom with these different cells vying for control.
Hmm.
You've got your judging self, your critical parent, your inner lover. They all have their own agenda and beliefs.
Hold on, multiple selves.
Yeah,
That's kind of like out of a sci-fi movie.
it is. But, if you think about it,
Right.
we all experience that.
Yeah.
That kind of inner tug of war where part of you wants to forgive and another part just can't let go.
Right. Yeah. Have you ever had like that, like one part of you wants to do one thing and another part of you wants to do the exact opposite?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So that's the inner committee.
That's the inner committee in action.
Okay. So how does that relate to forgiveness?
Well, understanding this dynamic is key to unlocking radical self-forgiveness. Two key players in this inner committee are the authentic self
Okay.
and the socially modified self.
Ooh. Okay. So like who we really are versus who we pretend to be to kind of fit in.
That's it.
Right.
It's this classic battle between who we are at our core versus who we become to fit in.
Like when we conform to these strict rules or we hide parts of ourselves to, gain acceptance,
Exactly.
even if it means sacrificing our true self.
Exactly.
Okay. I'm starting to see how this all connects to self-forgiveness.
It's all very much intertwined. That tension between these selves can make self-acceptance very difficult.
Right.
But Tipping offers some very insightful exercises
Okay.
to help you identify your ideal self and your lost self. So what I think is a really powerful starting point.
It's really cool that he provides like those actual tangible tools.
Yeah.
It's not just like a theory. It's like, okay, here are things you can do.
Right.
Right.
It gives you a roadmap.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so we probably won't have time to dive into the specifics of all those exercises,
Yeah.
but I like that he's providing that.
Right. It's more than just theory. It's about transformation.
Yeah, for sure. Okay.
And
yeah.
speaking of transformation, have you ever noticed how certain traits in others just rub you the wrong way?
Yeah, totally.
It might be more than just a personality clash.
Right.
Tipping kind of dives into the shadow self
Oh, the shadow self.
to explain this.
Okay, I'm ready to get a little shadowy.
All right, well, let's do it.
What's the deal with this hidden part of ourselves?
Okay, so the shadow self is the part of us that we deem unacceptable, and so we repress it.
Okay.
We push it down into the subconscious.
Right.
But here's the thing.
Okay.
What we repress doesn't just go away.
Oh, no.
It gets projected onto others.
Oh, so you're saying like if I find myself like constantly annoyed by someone who's like gossiping all the time, it might be because I'm like low-key judging other people.
Exactly.
Okay.
It could be that you're suppressing your own judgmental tendencies.
Wow, that's huge for like self-growth.
It is. It's a very powerful insight.
Yeah.
And Tipping suggests a really interesting exercise.
Okay.
He says, make a list of what you dislike in two people.
Okay.
You strongly dislike.
All right.
And chances are those traits
Right.
actually reflect aspects of your own disowned self.
Wow. I'm gonna have to try that one.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Makes you wonder, what if those things that just like
Right.
drive us bonkers about other people are actually clues to like our
Exactly.
own hidden potential?
Yeah. What if? It's
Yeah.
a really great question.
Okay, so that's the shadow self.
Yeah.
Now we're getting into like some really deep
Yeah.
psychological stuff.
And this leads us to another member of our inner committee,
Okay.
one that might be actively working against our happiness and success.
Oh.
And that is the saboteur self.
The saboteur.
The saboteur.
It sounds like the ultimate frenemy.
Yes, it is.
So like what's their MO?
Well, the saboteur operates on subconscious beliefs,
Huh.
often rooted in early childhood experiences.
Okay.
And it can sabotage our relationships, our finances, even our careers,
Oh, wow.
all without us consciously realizing it's pulling the strings.
So we could be unknowingly holding ourselves back
Absolutely.
because of these like deeply ingrained beliefs.
Yes.
It's a little terrifying.
It can be, but it's also empowering to recognize it.
Yeah.
Tipping has this great example of someone whose saboteur was triggered every time they were on the verge of a big promotion.
Oh, no.
And they would self-sabotage. And it turned out it stemmed from childhood observations of their workaholic father, who was never happy.
Oh.
So they developed the subconscious association between success and suffering.
So every time they were about to get a promotion, it was like, oh, no, this is going to lead to me being unhappy.
Exactly. And they would do things to undermine themselves.
Oh, God.
And until they recognized that pattern,
Right.
they couldn't break free from it.
That's so interesting.
It is.
Yeah, it's crazy how these things, like from our childhood, can really affect us.
It really is.
Okay, but before we go too far down that rabbit hole,
Yeah.
Tipping has this really interesting take on guilt.
He does.
He says it's not always a bad thing.
Right. He makes this really important distinction. Guilt isn't inherently negative.
Okay.
It actually plays a really important role in developing our conscience
Okay.
and guiding our moral behavior.
Like it's kind of like a compass.
Exactly. It's a compass. It
Like-
helps us to know
Yeah.
what's right.
But there's a catch, right?
There is.
There's like a good guilt and a bad guilt.
Exactly. Too much guilt
Okay.
or the wrong kind of guilt can be very destructive.
So how do we know if our guilt is like the healthy kind or the kind that's like holding us back?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it's where self-awareness comes in.
Okay.
Tipping encourages us to question our guilt.
Okay.
Is it based on our own values or external pressures?
Well.
Is it serving us or is it holding us back?
Okay, so it's like really taking responsibility for how we feel.
Absolutely.
And making conscious choices about how we're going to respond.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we're complex beings with multiple selves
Yeah.
and learning to navigate that inner landscape
Yeah.
with compassion and understanding.
I like that he gives you like the
Yeah.
theory behind it, but also like tangible steps.
Yes, he doesn't just leave us with concepts. He
Yeah.
actually provides practical tools,
Okay.
like his powerful 3 letters process.
Oh, I want to hear more about this 3 letters process.
Right.
It sounds like something you can actually use.
It is a tangible way to work through complex emotions and move towards self-forgiveness.
Okay.
And to illustrate its power,
Oh.
he shares the story of Susan,
Okay.
a woman on death row for murdering her husband.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's a heavy one.
I'm on the edge of my seat.
Buckle up.
I'm ready for this.
It's a powerful story.
Okay.
It's a very powerful story. So to set the stage, Susan was on death row for murdering her husband.
Right. That is a very challenging situation, to say the least.
Yeah.
How did she end up in that situation?
Well, Susan was having an affair with a man named Jerry.
Okay.
And they decided, in a moment of passion,
Oh, boy.
that the only way to be together was to get rid of her husband, Dan.
Oh, my goodness. It sounds like a plot from a movie.
It does, right?
Yeah.
But this was Susan's reality.
Wow. So did she actually go through with it?
She did. She was very meticulous about it.
Oh, wow.
She planned it very carefully.
Okay.
She used a poison that wouldn't be detected in an autopsy.
Oh, my God.
And initially, she felt this sense of relief, even happiness.
Oh, wow.
She thought she had solved her problem.
I can only imagine that feeling didn't last.
It didn't.
Right.
The guilt started to creep in,
Yeah.
and then Jerry, overwhelmed with fear, abandoned her.
Oh, no.
So here she is,
Yeah.
this media frenzy surrounding the case.
Right.
She's completely isolated and trapped in this web of deceit.
So how did this 3 letters process even come into play here?
Okay, so the 3 letters process
Yeah.
is essentially a guided self-dialogue.
Okay.
It helps you to connect with those different parts of yourself and work through these layers of emotion.
Okay.
You write 3 separate letters,
Okay.
one from your judging self, one from your compassionate self, and finally one from your spiritual self.
Okay, so it's kind of like giving a voice to each of those members of the inner committee that we were talking about earlier.
Exactly.
Okay, so break it down for me. What does the first letter look like? Like the letter from the judging self.
Okay, so the first letter is where you let loose.
Oh, wow.
all the negative thoughts and accusations.
Okay.
It's raw, unfiltered,
Yeah.
and it can be very brutal.
I can imagine for Susan that would be pretty harsh.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, what would that sound like?
So imagine, the harshest inner critic.
Right.
It might sound something like this: you heartless monster.
Oh, gosh.
You destroyed your family.
Yeah.
You orphaned your children. And for what? A fleeting affair?
Yeah.
You deserve to rot in this prison.
Oh.
Death is too good for you.
Oh, my goodness.
Very, very harsh self-judgment.
So how does that help in the process of self-forgiveness?
It might seem counterintuitive,
Yeah.
but bringing those dark thoughts to the surface is really crucial.
Okay.
It's about acknowledging the pain, the guilt, the shame,
Right.
without trying to suppress it or deny it.
So it's like getting it out instead of holding it in.
Exactly. Bottling it up just makes it more intense by
Right.
putting it into words.
Yeah.
You begin to disentangle yourself from its grip.
Okay.
So once the judging self has had its say, then you move on to the second letter
Okay.
from your compassionate self.
Okay, so this is where we start to give ourselves a break.
Exactly. The compassionate self is all about empathy and understanding.
Okay.
It acknowledges the pain,
Right.
but it also looks for the reasons behind the actions.
Okay.
It offers a gentler perspective.
So for Susan, what might her compassionate self have said to her in that situation?
It might have acknowledged the immense pressure she was feeling,
Yeah.
Trapped in this loveless marriage,
Right.
yearning for love and happiness.
Right.
It might have said something like, Susan, I know you made a terrible mistake,
Yeah.
but I also understand the pain and desperation that led you to this point.
Right.
You weren't thinking clearly.
Yeah.
You were blinded by your desire for love.
Right.
I see your suffering, and I offer you compassion.
Wow. That is such a huge shift.
It is, from judgment to compassion.
It's like extending kindness to yourself when you feel completely unworthy of it.
Exactly. And it's about recognizing our shared humanity.
Yeah.
Our capacity for both great love and terrible mistakes.
Right.
And that compassionate understanding sets the stage for the third letter
Okay.
from the spiritual self.
This is where things get really deep.
This is where we tap into that higher level of awareness, the part of us that sees the bigger picture.
Right.
So Susan's spiritual self might have said something like,
Okay.
Susan, from a spiritual perspective, there are no victims or perpetrators,
Ooh.
only souls on a journey of learning and growth.
Wow.
You chose this experience for a reason,
Okay.
and Dan's soul agreed to play its part.
Wow.
You are not defined by this action, and your soul is worthy of love and forgiveness.
That is a huge perspective shift.
It is.
Yeah.
It's like looking at the whole situation through a completely different lens.
Yeah.
It doesn't excuse the action,
Right.
but it offers this deeper meaning,
Yeah.
a path towards self-acceptance.
Wow. So did writing these letters, did this process actually help Susan?
It did. Tipping describes a remarkable shift in her demeanor.
Okay.
Even though she was still awaiting execution,
Right.
she found this sense of serenity and acceptance.
That's amazing.
It was as if the weight of the guilt had lifted,
Yeah.
allowing her to connect with the deeper truth.
It's amazing how you can find peace in the midst of a really challenging situation.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's a testament to the power of radical self-forgiveness.
Yeah.
It's not about condoning our actions,
Right.
but about finding a path to inner peace.
Do you think that anyone listening to this could use this process in their own life?
Absolutely.
Okay.
This process can be applied to any situation where guilt and shame are holding you back.
And it's especially helpful in those areas where we really struggle
Yes.
with self-acceptance,
Yeah.
like our finances and our bodies.
Exactly.
Those are two huge ones.
It's huge.
Yeah. So how does radical self-forgiveness apply to those specific challenges?
Well, when it comes to finances, Tipping says that we all operate on this subconscious financial script.
Oh.
It's this set of beliefs about money that we internalize in childhood.
So we might be unknowingly holding ourselves back financially because of these outdated beliefs.
Precisely, and it can limit our earning potential,
Wow.
create this fear of scarcity,
Yeah.
or even lead to self-sabotaging behaviors.
Oh, gosh. So how do we, break free from that?
Well, Tipping suggests, similar to the 3 letters process,
Oh.
having a conversation with your finances.
I like that, having a conversation with your finances.
Right, bringing those limiting beliefs to the surface
Okay.
and reframing them
Yeah.
from a place of abundance and self-worth.
I like that. Okay. So what about our bodies?
Yeah.
How do we apply this to our relationship with our physical selves.
This is where things get really interesting.
Yeah.
Tipping proposes that our bodies might have their own intelligence,
Okay.
almost like a self within a self.
Wow, that's a new concept.
It is, and he suggests that we can actually project our self-hatred onto our bodies. Oh, gosh.
Which can contribute to illness and disease.
So we're not just talking about, like, accepting our physical appearance, but, like, actually acknowledging the intelligence of our bodies.
That's it.
It makes you think twice about the way we talk to ourselves.
It does.
Yeah.
You know, he shares an anecdote about a man
Okay.
who was struggling with this health issue.
Uh-huh.
And during a meditation, he, like, mentally scolded his spleen.
He scolded his spleen.
Did for not cooperating.
Oh!
And later, a psychic healer told him that his spleen was very upset about being yelled at.
Wow. Our bodies are listening.
They are.
So how do we, like, cultivate a sense of forgiveness and acceptance towards our bodies?
Well, Tipping suggests various techniques for communicating with our bodies,
Okay.
offering love and forgiveness instead of judgment.
Right.
He even suggests trying the 3 letters process,
Right.
specifically for a troubled body part.
Oh, so, like, we could write a letter from our judging self to our stomach.
Exactly.
It'd be like, you know, why are you so bloated all the time? And then the compassionate self can come in.
Right, and be like, I love you just the way you are.
There you go.
It sounds a little weird, but I'm open to trying it.
It's worth exploring, and it all connects back to this
Yeah.
idea of a spiritual intelligence.
Right, that deeper part of ourselves that understands our connection to all things.
Exactly.
I feel like we're getting to, like, the really core of his approach.
It all leads to this core idea
Yeah.
that we are spiritual beings having a human experience.
Okay.
And that realization has huge implications for how we view ourselves, our mistakes,
Okay.
and our whole journey through life.
I'm ready for the grand finale. I want to hear more about this spiritual dimension of radical self-forgiveness. All right, so we're back and we're ready to, like, unpack this idea that we are spiritual beings having a human experience.
Yeah, it's a big one.
It is a big one. It sounds really profound. I'm ready to dive in and see how this all ties into radical self-forgiveness.
Well, one of the things I appreciate about Tipping's approach is that he doesn't shy away from spirituality, but he presents it in a way that feels very accessible and practical.
Yeah.
Regardless of your own personal beliefs.
So it's not, like, about religion or anything like that. It's just like...
It's more about, like, a deeper understanding
Yeah.
of ourselves and our place in the world.
Okay. Yeah, I can get behind that for sure.
Yeah.
So he introduces this concept of spiritual intelligence
He does.
and describes it as, like, the part of us that operates beyond the ego
Right.
and connects us to a higher purpose.
Yes.
So how does that relate to self-forgiveness?
Well, Tipping suggests that spiritual intelligence is the part of us that knows the truth of who we are,
Okay.
why we've made the choices we've made,
Okay.
and the value of those experiences for our soul's growth.
Okay, so it's like that part of us that, like, knows better.
Yes, it's that
Yeah.
deeper knowing.
Yeah.
And it's the part of us that understands that we're not just physical beings.
Mhm.
We're spiritual beings having this human experience.
That's a really powerful concept.
It is, and I think it can be incredibly liberating when it comes to self-forgiveness.
So instead of just, like, beating ourselves up about things that happened in the past, we can view them as, like, valuable lessons.
Yes, exactly. If we can view our lives as a spiritual journey,
Okay.
then our mistakes become opportunities for learning and growth,
Right.
not just sources of shame and guilt.
Okay, yeah, that's huge because I think a lot of times we get really stuck in those negative thought patterns.
We do. We tend to dwell on the past
Right.
and beat ourselves up.
Yeah.
But from this perspective,
Right.
it's all part of a bigger plan.
Okay, but why would we choose to experience things like pain and suffering and separation?
That's a great question.
Yeah, it seems kind of counterintuitive.
It does, but Tipping offers this really fascinating perspective.
Okay.
He says that we can only fully appreciate oneness and unity and love by experiencing their opposites.
Okay, so it's like we need the contrast.
We need the contrast, exactly.
Oh,
Like, we
okay.
can't truly appreciate light until we've experienced darkness. And Tipping goes on to say that everything that happens in our lives,
Oh, yeah.
even the things that seem bad or painful,
Uh-huh.
have spiritual meaning.
So there are no accidents, no coincidences,
Right.
only opportunities for growth,
Exactly. That's a really core principle.
of self-forgiveness.
Of the radical self-forgiveness, it's about trusting that there's a bigger picture at play,
Okay,
even when we can't see it.
I love that.
Yeah, it's about surrendering to something greater than ourselves.
Okay, so how do we actually, like, access this spiritual intelligence?
Right.
Is it something we're born with, or can we develop it?
Well, Tipping suggests that it's inherent in all of us.
Okay.
but it can be dormant or overshadowed by our ego. So
Yeah.
practices like meditation, mindfulness, connecting with nature
Okay.
can help us to awaken to that deeper awareness.
So it's about cultivating a sense of presence and like connection to something greater than ourselves.
Exactly.
Have you found that these practices have helped you to tap into your spiritual intelligence?
For me, spending time in nature is incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
It helps me quiet my mind and connect with something larger than myself.
I think you've led us to like a really big question that we can ponder.
What's that?
If we are all spiritual beings having this human experience, does that change how we view ourselves and our mistakes?
That is the question.
Yeah.
It's an invitation to really explore the spiritual dimension,
Right.
to look beyond the surface of our lives and connect with that deeper truth.
It really makes you wonder if maybe I've been too hard on myself,
Yeah.
too focused on my, perceived flaws and shortcomings.
It's easy to get caught up in that.
Yeah, and maybe it's time to just shift my perspective and see those experiences as opportunities for growth.
That's the beauty of radical self-forgiveness.
Yeah.
It's about embracing all parts of ourselves,
Yeah.
the light and the shadow,
Right.
and recognizing that inherent wordiness.
Well, listeners, I don't know about you, but I'm feeling very inspired after this deep dive into radical self-forgiveness.
Yeah.
It's a lot to take in, but I think Tipping's given us some really incredible tools
He has.
to really navigate the complexities of our inner world and embrace a more loving and accepting way of being.
Yeah.
What are some key takeaways that you would like to leave our listeners with?
I think the most important takeaway is that self-forgiveness is not a destination.
Okay.
It's a journey.
Right.
It's an ongoing process of
Yeah.
growth and transformation,
Right.
and it's available to all of us,
No matter what
and no matter what.
we've done or experienced.
Absolutely. And remember, Tipping's book is full of those practical exercises and tools like
Yeah.
the 3 letters process
Right.
and identifying your lost selves.
Yeah. Take what resonates with you
Yeah.
and apply it to your own life.
Experiment and explore.
Exactly.
Well, on that note, we've reached the end of our deep dive. I hope you enjoyed exploring these ideas with us. Until next time, keep diving deep, and remember, you are worthy of love and forgiveness just as you are.